This week marks as being a third of the way through the NFL season. It is going by so fast. And our starts and sits decisions will be just as important as ever, although not as many teams on bye this week. Ed, my starts this week I have for is a player we mentioned last week. That is Matt Stafford. I mean, this is as no-brainer as it gets for me. The most passing yards in the league against the Ravens, who are giving up the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, 24.39. And he's still only 61% rostered. If you're in a tough spot at quarterback this week and Matt Stafford's available, there is no more simple choice, is there?
It's an odd one, isn't it? Why he's still 61% rostered. We explained that the start of the season it was understandable, but now it's just plain bonkers, really. And especially this week, unfortunately for you, against the Ravens, he's very likely to feast against the Ravens this week. Yeah.
Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. I feel we've gone back and forth in being a start and a sit, and we've not got it right once yet.
We've mentioned him a lot.
Anomaly. I know. The attempts were there, though, last week with 14, and so were the touchdowns with 2. And now in the Chicago Bears, he gets the team that are giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Surely at this point, it's just going to be established for JCM. We shall see. Rico Dowdle, I've got 3 reasons for you. Last week, he was the man in Hubbard's absence, and Hubbard looks like he'll be out again this week. He's day-to-day at the minute, so the workload should be there. Number 2, the Cowboys are the 6th worst defense in fantasy points per game against running backs. And thirdly, one of my favorite narratives, it's a revenge game this week for Rico Dowdle. His advice to his former team when asked this week, buckle up. I like that. He's got a back nicely, though.
Should be a really high-scoring game.
Tet McMillan sticking with Carolina, and the wide receiver with the 15th most receiving yards so far, yet we've barely mentioned him. It's the no touchdowns. That has meant that he's currently wide receiver 25 in PPR. Cowboys, the worst defense in the league, fantasy points a game for wide receivers, 45.32 on average each game. I'm calling it, Ed. This week is the Tet McMillan breakout game in week 6. And we've been pretty good at these so far. I'm going to give a TH touchdown guarantee that he gets his first of this week. Next up, Mason Taylor, a player that I felt I mentioned on every single rookie show during the offseason. It was a really exciting tight end option. Landed in what we thought was the perfect spot at the Jets, where there was just no competition for tight ends. Last week, it kind of started to fall into place as it had started to the pieces to align the week before as well. His targets just keep rising. 1, then 2, then 6, then 7, then 12. Surely we're nailed on for 15 to 20 this week. Workload alone, I think he should be fantasy relevant and a tight end 10. He's got the Broncos, who are no shirks on defense whatsoever, but in a game where Fields may struggle to move the ball down the field at any distance passing it, Mason Taylor could be a nice option for him this week and continue to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be very wary of starting him against the Broncos. I know what you mean in terms of, a reliable target for Fields to lean on, but I just think that Broncos defense is so strong. I could see them making a bit of a mess of the Jets in London, to be honest.
It's my riskier pick of them, I will give you that. Steelers defense I want to finish up with. I think they're going to make life quite difficult for Dylan Gabriel this week. Defenses do well against Cleveland, averaging just over 10 points, that's your line you're happy with defense, really. I'm going to give an Ed-style bold prediction on defense this week. Pick 6 incoming.
Within the first, what was it? I got 2 minutes.
You got it on the third play. So
yeah.
If I manage that, I'll be amazed. But yeah, it looks pick 6-y, I think, unfortunately, for Dylan Gabriel this week. Any other players you're starting? Any of those that you not mentioned already? You're cautious overall in on?
No, you mentioned about buys. I've seemed to have been less hit by buys this week, clearly because there aren't as many players not playing, which kind of is the explanation. So there aren't many decisions that I've had to make. Rico Dowdle, just that game interests me because on paper that game against the Cowboys should be a really high-scoring game. So watch it be an absolute ball fest now.
Moving on then, as we get to starts and sits. But firstly, let's just take a moment to give us a subscribe, a like, and a share before we get to our sits of the week. We're bringing you 4 shows a week: our review show, this preview show, and then our streaming show for quarterbacks, defenses, and tight ends, and then finally our DFS show on a Saturday. Ed, for the sits this week, I always make sure I'm kind of going by so I can back up with numbers as well as narrative. And this first one is not just me being upset as a Ravens fan. It's not me throwing the boys out the pram. Benching Derrick Henry, I know, is unthinkable. But the Rams are giving up the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. It looks like at the time of recording, Lamar will be out again. And after his RB1 overall week in week 1, Derrick Henry has been the RB 60, 25, 43, and 29. I'm expecting another down week this week for Derrick Henry, unfortunately. If you can, chances are that he may still be the option you would most like to take the risk on. Yes, we know the ceiling is phenomenal. It's always going to be that. That's always going to be the case. But if there's another option you think, do you know what, they could have a better week, I would at least be asking myself the question with Derrick Henry against the Rams in week 6.
Yeah, it's very. You've made a good case, but goodness me, benching Derrick Henry, who think we'd be here? I mean, I think I'd ask myself the question, but it would always come back, no, you've got to play Derrick Henry. So I think I'd find it very hard to do that. But you're right, and I think the Rams' defense is strong as well. So yeah, goodness me, who thought we'd be here?
There's a few dynasty leagues where I've got Derrick Henry, and I do have options I'm far happier with. So I will be certainly in a couple of dynasty lineups bench him. Redraft is a different question. You may have like just not the depth to be able to do it. But yeah, I was thinking, so I got to myself the question this week. Jackson Dart has worked his way to be a starting QB in 33% of leagues. I expect a stern test from Philly this week, followed by Denver, followed by Philly. Again, he's got a tough run coming up. So he's not an option I would be confident in starting for the next 3 weeks. Next up, another running back I did not think I'd be saying this about at any point this season. That's Chase Brown. 72 leagues still starting him, despite him being the RB 32 and very underwhelming so far. Similar to Derrick Henry, he's likely your first running back pick in redraft. So chances are, depth-wise, he's still your better option. But if you can pivot, it's probably worth considering this week. A very tough Green Bay defense, given the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. Yeah, I think Dynasty, once again, I think you should probably have other options you're happy with at this point. Redraft is maybe a tougher call again.
It's one of the most depressing aspects of this season for me. Yes, the Burrow injury has harmed him, but it's also the play calling as well. He's just wasting his talent, to be honest. And I'd be borderline. I'm borderline considering dropping him because I don't see the rest of the season how he is fancy relevant at all. He's just looked absolutely hopeless. Not necessarily him, but the situation has looked hopeless the last few weeks. And yeah, it's very depressing watching him kind of flounder in the system that he's trying to play in.
Next up, Jameson Williams. So, Ed, I'm going to make a case for benching a player who's averaging 20.3 yards per reception so far this season. That is a phenomenal stat. However, you can make stats say anything you want them to, because when you look at the other side of that, he's not registered more than 2 catches in a game since week 1. So that's lovely, 20.3 yards per catch. But when it's 1 catch a game, that is doing nothing for your fantasy points. Chiefs have been good against receivers. Yeah, exactly. Chiefs have been good against receivers this season as well. So Williams' ceiling is boom or bust flex pick, really, once again. Where you're drafting him, I think you probably do have options you feel a little bit safer with this week. Finally, a pair of tight ends. So Kyle Pitts, Bills given the 2nd fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends, 5.66, and only allowed 11 receptions to tight ends through the first 5 games. Fresh off his bye, had a big week 4. He was a tight end 3. but this is not the week to chase that. I do think we'll be talking about carpets differently to how I have done over the last few years, though, for the rest of the season, which will be nice. Same applies for Dalton Kincaid in the exact same game, as Atlanta have only given up 8 receptions to tight ends and the fewest fantasy points per game, 4.23. Not a matchup for tight ends, the Atlanta Falcons and Buffalo Bills game this week. Any other players you're wanting to sit this week?
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco, yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you're starting Joe Flacco, you have our best wishes. Your game of the week, though, Ed. Where are we going this week?
Yeah, well, I think on paper it's an obvious pick, to be honest. It's 2 4-1 teams meet in what I think we can consider quite a tantalising Week 6 matchup. I think what's interesting at this point, normally you'd have some unbeaten teams, but there are no unbeaten teams left in the NFL. But I think 7 teams sit on 4-1 and 2 of them meet. I think what's been so impressive about both of these teams is they've coped admirably with a number of injuries to sit top of their respective divisions. And from a fantasy perspective, there are definitely some decisions to make. Let's start with the 49ers. Look who's locked in. It's probably only CMC. The current RB1, who you would start with complete confidence. He had to get a rushing touchdown, which is pretty shoddy. So maybe this week. This is the week where CMC books his ideas up and gets a rushing touchdown. The Bucs, Baker is QB3, yet he's still only started in 79% of leagues. Please don't leave him on your bench. Baker is very reliable at quarterback, and he has been for the last couple of years. You're also starting the current wide receiver 3. Surely not even those highest on him would have predicted that after 5 weeks. That's, of course, Emeka Egbuka. Baker's number 1 target and comes off the back of that perfect game against the Seahawks. They look very exciting, don't they, Baker and Egbuka?
Yeah, it's going to be a great kind of pairing for and Baker. We said preseason, Baker, when asked what he was most excited about this season, his answer was Egbuka. Turns out sometimes Baker Mayfield does talk sense.
He called it right. He called it spot on, didn't he? When it comes to should pay off, 49ers, we don't know who's going to be starting at the quarterback this week, but whether it's Mac Jones or a returning Brock Purdy, I think you consider slotting either in. The Bucs are giving the 5th most fantasy points per game up to quarterbacks at just over 20 points. When it comes to wide receiver for the 49ers, it's very difficult. Kendrick Bourne went off last week, but that was due to the injuries to Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings. If one or both of them's back, we don't know at this stage, then I'd play them ahead of Bourne, as week 5 could have been the flash in the pan for him. He's notoriously unreliable. Jake Tongs, I think, is probably worth a start too. He's still only being started at tight end in 6% of leagues, despite back-to-back weeks as a top 10 tight end. That was a bit of a tongue twister in George Kittle's absence. As for the Bucs, looks like no Bucky Irving again. Rashad White deputised very well last week. A couple of touchdowns, but maybe this is a me thing. I still won't be playing him with complete confidence. I mean, it should pay off because he'll get the work, but I just don't trust White as much as I would Bucky Irving. Chris Godwin, still a risk. 3 receptions apiece in his first 2 games back. However, might you get some space if Egbuka starts to get more attention? I certainly think that's a possibility, and I wouldn't write Godwin off, but yeah, a bit risky. Best of luck when it comes to anyone else in the 49ers, really. Don't be tempted by DeMarcus Robinson at wide receiver or Brian Robinson at running back. He's only really used to give CMC time to have a drink. And the Bucs, Cade Otton, Sterling Shepard, both fall into the best of luck category for me. You may have to start them, but they're far too unreliable and quite touchdown reliant. A double-figure score is the absolute best you can hope for either of them on a good day. So hopefully you're not relying on them.
They are exactly the sort of players we will be relying on, though, when we get to the big weeks of buys, aren't they?
Buy-mageddon, I'm sure, is coming at some point.
There's going to be a case where you're going to be glad for Sterling Shepard to be sat on your bench at some point coming up. Before we move on, then, once again, please do give us a subscribe, a like, and a share, because if you do, you get to see, alongside Fantasy Zeros, our favourite feature of the week. Because, Ed, it is time for
Fantasy Fox, Preston versus Ed.
It's not really a competition, is it?
No, a little bit of a false start there initially, but last week we had a lowest score wins competition because you, Ed, had been so rubbish at picking the best fantasy players. I thought I'd allow you to choose the worst fantasy players and see if you can get yourself a win back. And what a week for Jake Browning to go
This
off.
idiot. He can't be rubbish properly.
So you had Jake Browning of the Bengals, 22.14 points, and you were so happy with that performance. You got Dylan Sampson bang on, though, 1.20.
Yes, I was pleased with that.
Xavier Hutchinson, you chose a wide receiver against the Ravens. That was very silly. He finished up with 16.8, and then Gunnar Helm, the Titans, 7.40. You finished with 47.54. I had Cooper Rush. The only joy I got watching the Ravens be, I don't know, even lukewarm's a little bit too hot. On offense, 4.16. Devin Singletary, he seemed to break away for a run at the moment at one point, and I got rewarded. And then he just did a Devin Singletary and stopped moving, so I was quite happy to see that. Brandon Cooks, I can celebrate again for fancy because he came in and got me 1.5 points. What a hero he is. And then when we was watching the end of the Dolphins-Panthers game and Mitchell Evans popped up, I thought, going, where have I said him this week? I'm sure I've just said him as a potential start pick or as a streaming tight end. No, I put him into to get no points. However, my argument for Mitchell Evans was he would get one reception, not go very far, and that would be brilliant. He got one reception, didn't go very far, but he only stopped because he got to the end zone.
But it didn't matter.
I was all right, 16.46. So, Ed, we are now at 4-0.
And for those Ed fans who are thinking, oh, what about this? What about the season-long bet, the one that's worth 3 points? We don't really need to talk about that at the moment. So my team includes Lamar Jackson and Chase Brown, if that helps. Oh, and Colston Loveland. So I'm not very confident in that either.
There we go. A little update for the millions and millions of Ed fans. You have, though, a London game special for us this week. What are we picking this week? Well, what have we already picked this week, ready for the show?
Yeah, so we just, we're going down to the London game, and I just thought I'd add a little bit more to it, even though it's not much of a competition at the moment. And basically, each position, you're going to choose which team you would like. We're alternating, and you get the highest scoring player at that position for that team. So if we bring up the graphic, you can see. So you got to pick first at quarterback. So essentially, you're choosing between Justin Fields and Bo Nix, and you went for Justin Fields because
he's going to score more fantasy points than Bo Nix.
Okay. Well, I was actually quite pleased because I think Fields is really going to struggle against Denver. So I think I would have gone Bo Nix. I was actually quite happy with that. Running back. I mean, it's difficult at running back. I just think Breece Hall is, I know Denver is strong, but he's the one more likely to kind of explode and get you big points. Whereas I don't know if I trust Dobbins and RJ Harvey to do that, which is why I went for the Jets.
I think I was happy that because I wanted Dobbins for my pick. So I just think that when we're thinking you're only getting one player, I think Dobbins has got that in him potentially, where I think there's more chance of the depth chart of running back for the Jets kind of all doing little bits and pieces here and there. So yeah, I was exactly the same as you. I was happy I got the other side of that. And just say we only get one player. So if it is an even split and everyone gets 8 points, you just get the highest of those. You don't get that combined total, do you?
No. Wide receiver, I think this was quite tough, but you went for Broncos.
I suppose, although I went for Broncos, this is where I did pick Bo Nix because I just felt there was a higher probability of Bo Nix sustaining a good wide receiver score than Fields being able to do that.
Indeed, I think I would have gone Denver for the same reason. I mean, I'm not gutted to have Garrett Wilson, but I'm not convinced that Fields is going to have a good passing day. Tight end, now this is very difficult. You know, you've made the case for Taylor already in starts of the week. And Evan Engram, I mean, I just thought Evan Engram, if I didn't pick him, would have an amazing game. And now I've picked him to have a rubbish game. So it doesn't really matter. So I just went with Evan Engram. But yeah, it was difficult.
I was happy to end up with Mason Taylor as well. There mainly because not for any actual analytical reason, but because I'm fed up of Evan Engram letting me down, and I quite like Mason Taylor.
Fair point. And so I imagine your choice of defense was pretty easy.
Yep, they're solid defense, and I do fancy him to have a good game. Despite the fact I think that Justin Fields will outscore Bo Nix, I do think the Broncos defense is going to have a good game this week. So yeah, that was my reason for that one.
Right, so we'll return to that next week when it's 5-0, and you can put another prop to me.
Fantastic. So yes, Pestle fans will be 5-0 next week. Fine, or not finally, penultimate feature, and it's our Sunday Night Bet Club, and we are sticking with the London theme. Now, every so often on Sunday Night Bet Club, we go for just what we would like to happen, and that is usually our approach when we go into the London game. We just think, what do we want to have a really good day out, have exactly what we wish happened, and get some money. Basically, this is the have our cake and eat it bet. So I am going for a London special. And I've put a bit of an accumulator on that gives us odds of 15.00 when it's all in. So the over underline is 43.5. Let's always pick the over if you want to go for the best case scenario. J.K. Dobbins, although he's not with the Ravens anymore, hasn't been for a couple of years, I still love J.K. Dobbins as a player. So I'm looking forward to getting to see him in person. So I want him to score a touchdown anytime and to get over 70.5 rushing yards. That's the one that I think if I had to pick one item that wouldn't come through on this, that's the one I feel would let me down potentially. Garrett Wilson to score anytime, over 4.5 touchdowns scored, and Justin Fields over 244.5 total yards. So that's the one alongside Dobbins that could drop me, but it's the total yards that is passing and rushing combined. So when he gets 100 rushing, he only has to get 150 passing yards, and he can get me over that line, hopefully. 15.00, 14 to 1 or plus 1400. £10 returns you £150 for the American viewers, Ed. That $10 will return you
$150.
Fantastic mathematical work there, Ed. Thank you very much.
I really hope we get 5 touchdowns at least. That would be lovely.
Oh, that's what I've just gone for. I want to have a lovely day and have some money as well.
Let's be positive. We're going to have lots of touchdowns. Let's be positive.
I jump between a couple of different betting apps of choice because some of them display certain markets in ways that it's better to put the accumulators together. Some of them, like different, not all apps have the Scorigami, for example. When I went back into the betting app of choice for this one, I forgot that I'd put the Red Zone accumulator bet on in week 1. And we'd won. I hadn't even realised we'd won that bet.
Why? However, we normally celebrate our wonder. So I'm amazed that we are now.
It was a long shot as well. It was odds of 28.00. I didn't put the tenner on that. I put a quid on. So the Milky Bars are on me when we get to London on Sunday. So if you are watching this after Thursday Night Football was done, so just give us a subscribe, a like, and a share, and you can check out at this point if you like, because we're now going to have a look at Thursday Night Football, Eagles versus Giants. A game that just a few weeks ago we'd have thought was going to be an absolute devastating defeat for the Giants. I still think the Giants are likely going to lose this, but it's going to be more entertaining for the Giants than it may have been. They have played each other 185 times in their history, including 5 times in the postseason, a situation the Giants can but dream of at the moment. And the Eagles lead the series at 95-88 with 2 ties, and the Giants have only won 4 of the last 20 matchups. Such has been the Eagles' dominance over the last decade in this matchup. Giants 1-4, Eagles 4-1. And this feels like the sort of game on Thursday, Ed, that could either set you up in a fantastic position where you're looking at that little probability win line and it's looking very favourable for you on Sleeper, or your weekend's fancy is over before it's even begun, because there's a lot of players that are fancy relevant here, but some that aren't clear-cut at all. So that are locked in. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, let's not overcomplicate it. Don't think about it. Dallas Goedert is also in this band for me there, because he just feels like he's got a really safe floor with top 3 upside each week. is bound to drop out of that top 12 at some point, but where it's so tough to call tight end, if you've got Goddard on your roster, you can at least forget about that decision each week. Locked in for the Giants? Nobody. There is nobody at all I'm confident in starting for the Giants. There's a lot of them that are in that should/could pay off category for me because it's just so tough to call. So you probably will be plugging Cam Scatterboo in this week. 12 to 15 points feels his limit, though. Seeing how Tracy fits back in as well is going to be interesting. I won't be risking Tracy at all this week. So Scatterboo, there's a chance you've got other options on your roster where you end up making that decision that he is the bench player rather than the one you're putting in at flex. Theo Johnson, I've upgraded to this because he seems to be a favoured target of Dart, so you could potentially do a lot worse than him at tight end this week. Mm-hmm. If he's available, which he is in lots and lots of leagues, and you currently have Pitts or Kincaid, I would be rather play Theo Johnson over both of those in that tough matchup for them this week. Eagles, chances are you're still locked in with Brown and Smith, but that's not with the confidence you would have once had with that pair. Week 3 is the only week they have both hit a big score. Brown currently wide receiver 41, Smith currently wide receiver 27. It's not the sure thing it once was with either of those. The best of luck category.
AJ Brown is making a quite an early and convincing case for bust of the year, isn't he? He
really is.
He's been awful so far.
I think it's similar, I suppose, to Derrick Henry's not been awful in that way, but there's a similar case you could make for Brown where the name is the one thing and the potential of that ceiling is what is holding out hope. But there is no logic to suggest that is going to happen at the moment, is the problem, isn't there? Best of luck, everyone else, as always. Neither Robinson or Slayton stepped up to take over from Neighbours last week, but one could get you a flex-worthy score any given week. You're in a tough spot if you rely on either at this stage when there's only 2 bye weeks on there. And Eagles, there's not enough fancy points to go around for the studs, so it's far too risky to look any deeper at that point for me. Who are you calling it? Is it going to be a clear-cut Eagles win, or have we learnt enough from the Bills and the Chiefs losing this week that there is no sure thing and we can't count out the Giants?
You've taken the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, we do have to take into account those 2 recent shocks, shall we say, but I think this will be comfortable for the Eagles.
Some shocks are sad to see in sports, especially for us in the UK, where we don't see the late night games finishing. You wake up and you see a shock result. Oh, I can't believe that's happened. Sometimes you see a shock and you go, I can't believe that's happened. And it is just a joyous thing. And that's what it was like with the Jags beating the Chiefs. So maybe the Giants pull it out of the bag. That is all for us for our Week 6 preview. Though we'll be back in a couple of games for our streaming pick and then our DFS show as well. Anything you want to add to wrap up our Week 6 preview, Ed? Looking forward to London?
I'm very much looking forward to London. And I just wanted to add that Emeka Egbuka's a very handsome man.
Absolutely. I think we have a policy here at TH of only putting handsome men on the screen. And Edward, I count you in that bit as well. Well, speaking of another handsome man who we just get to hear but not see, I think we've said quite enough, Malcolm, before we dig ourselves a hole. Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.